It's live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 8 of the Vinh and Ali show. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Vin. How are you?
Good, man. How are you going? Good to see you, brother. I've missed you. It's been too long since the last one. I've missed you.
Yeah, I know. What's this? This is a 3-week break. We're ready. We're fresh. We're good to go. Look at this.
The book we're reviewing. Yeah, me too. The book we're reviewing is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene. And, we always give kind of like a bit of a metaphor of what this book was for us. And it took me a while to think about what metaphor I'd use for this one. And for me, this is like and just roll with me for this. It's like a beautiful beef stew. And in the Vietnamese culture, there's a beautiful beef stew called bò kho. That's what it's called in Vietnamese, bò kho, right? Just beautiful, flavorful beef stew. And you eat it, you feel good, it's great. But then this one also had chili in it. Right. So it's got like a really strong kick that you don't really taste till later on because it takes a while for the chili to kick in. And that's what it was for me. It was this beautiful, warm, nourishing, but then it kicks you in the neck as well. So it was great. It was just and ouch at the same time. What metaphorically was it for you?
Man, I want to try this beef stew. It sounds amazing.
Dude, I cook an amazing bò kho, so when you come down next.
All right, that's happening. For me, I think it felt like you're having a conversation with your mum, and she's like reminding you about all the things that are important in life that you forget about every now and again. And that was kind of my little bit there. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, mum. Like, I don't really focus on that enough.
But the thing is, Ali, mums also tend to bitch slap you in the face. That's where the spice is. That's where the spice is. Didn't you feel that? Yeah. Didn't you feel some of the like kind of neck chops? You didn't sense any? You didn't?
Well, I listened to this as an audible as well. And
hearing this in her voice.
Like, yeah, you can just tell she's a very, very nice and amazing human being. Like, say, maybe when you're reading it, that's your internal dialogue just kicking you in the face. But I was listening to her actual voice, and it was pretty calming and soothing and quite nurturing. So I think like those punches that were probably there.
I probably read it with the voice of my mother. It's like, you are so fat, you eat too much chocolate, man. Damn it. And like I just heard my mum the whole time. Right, that's actually a really good point. I probably should listen to the audible and it would have been a bit more pleasant. But I just heard it through my mum the whole time. He's like, I love you. It's all good, but damn it, you're annoying sometimes. It's just like a chop out of nowhere. So, okay, but I mean, if we had to describe the book as well, which is what we try to do to give people a sense of this, is Brene Brown talks about wholehearted living, which is kind of living in a wholesome way. And the book, it talks about the things that get in the way of living a wholesome life. Because it's like that, the metaphor that I think she used, or one I'm just thinking of now, but it's the whole, we all know how to lose weight, exercise and eat less. So to live a more wholesome life, we all kind of know how to do that, but there are things that get in the way that stop us from doing that. Just like how there are things that get in the way that stop us from exercising and stop us from eating well or eating less. So in this book, it's kind of like her talking about the collection of things that we don't talk about that hold us back. So hopefully, once you talk about those things, it clears the path that allows you to immediately live a more wholesome life, which I thought was so refreshing. Because there are so many books now written on, here are the 3 steps on how to do this. Here are the 10 steps on how to do this. But they don't talk about the things that get in the way.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the segue.
Okay, that's a segue. Okay. You can go first today. And
well, let's jump into it. Like, what did you find that gets in the way? I think that's a theme that just stood out when you were giving that little synopsis.
Well, I'm looking to my notes, right? Because one of the things that I related to so much was she calls it a dig deep button. So I have and what a dig deep button is, you have a really crazy deadline. I was working on a project just about a month and a half ago where I quoted it as a 8-week project. It was more like a 16-week project. And I misquoted it, and I I could have gone back and said to the client, hey, look, I need more time to do this, and I've actually billed for it wrong. But I wanted to avoid that because I was like, no, Vin, you got this. In my mind, I was like, you're a man, you can do this. You're amazing. So I pressed my dig deep button and sucked it up and pretty much did a 16-week project in 8 weeks.
You sure did.
And at the end of it, I was stuffed mentally. I was so exhausted. And then right after that, I had another project that was about to begin. So I pressed that dig deep button again and go, suck it up. You can do it. And I find myself doing that all the time. Right. And Brene Brown talks to it. And she says that we often don't give ourselves a break. And we just keep using that button, and you become almost an addict to that button. You just keep pressing it. You keep pressing it. You keep pressing it. Whereas what she says is she finds that people who live in a wholehearted way, they have that button, but they also allow themselves to switch off.
Yeah.
They allow themselves that. Yeah.
It's a little bit like rehab for the high achiever or the high performer. That's what I...
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it.
Like when you read her stuff, it really resonates, I think, on that side that she's gone down that path, right? Like she's one of the best in the world at what she does. I think she talks about the expectations that she puts on herself or has put on herself previously. And I love that she actually dissects the process of then going through that based on her experiences. Like she always has her family and her husband, Steve, and her friends that she goes and speaks to. And I think that's quite an amazing point there where like what you're talking about there is probably the more normal approach in today's society of going to the red line, being overproductive, doing what you have to do, and then being completely spent. And I think that's a really beautiful part about this book is it talks about, well, how do you then enjoy the little moments? And I think there's also that element of how do you then be kind to yourself while you're going down that path, which is something that I took away from it.
Well, I mean, you said that this book made you really uncomfortable as well. Remember how I reached out to you and said, how you find the book? You're like, I feel really uncomfortable because it's making you think about your feelings and you don't do that because you don't have feelings.
No, I'm a robot. and it's just her style in general. Like I remember reading, I think it was Dare to Lead, which is one of her other books recently while we're going through the pandemic. And I think out of all of the leadership books that I've read recently, I think in terms of pandemic approaches to leadership, I'd have to say hers is probably the most applicable and productive and impactful way of approaching it. Because it's easy when things are good and you can just go a very top-down leadership approach. Whereas I think when there are times like this that 2020's been, having an approach that she really looks at, which is about vulnerability and transparency and being upfront and open. I don't know. I just really, really like her stuff. Like I think it's phenomenal how she utilizes, like she's very strong in the approach. Like, as you said, like there's a power behind it, but it's done from a place of like compassion and empathy. And, which I think gets lost in the world now.
But let's connect to that, right? Let's connect that dig deep button to compassion, for example. The reason why there are less compassionate people is because we're redlining ourselves. And when you are redlining yourself to the point of just the extreme, you are not as compassionate. You are not as kind. And you're not willing to be vulnerable because you're high strung as well, right? So to me, like so many of like what I loved about this book, and we're going to get into it, is that everything connects together. So something you read earlier in the book connects later in the book. And I love how things are layered. It was fantastic layering of the content, which just goes to show how well thought out it was. She's an obsessive researcher, and I love how she teaches. But when we're talking about the dig deep button, that almost reading that passage about that gave me permission to learn that if I don't switch off, if I don't allow myself to relax, I'm not going to be a very compassionate person.
Yep.
Which leads to another point, and then I would love to pick a point you want to speak about. But what I found interesting was that because she interviewed so many compassionate people, like the most compassionate people, like monks and whatnot, right?
Mhm.
And she said that the most compassionate people have very clear guidelines and also hold people accountable. Like compassionate people actually have boundaries and hold people accountable. I didn't think that compassionate people held people accountable or had those barriers or those boundaries.
Mm.
And she wrote about how compassionate people are able to remain compassionate and become more compassionate because they have boundaries and because they actually do hold people accountable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you've got no boundaries and you don't hold anyone accountable and anything goes, it's all good, I'm going to be always compassionate, you end up becoming very bitter.
Yeah.
And that's what actually happened to me. I felt a bit of that bitterness because I didn't have any boundaries and didn't hold anyone accountable.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because compassion can be used as a form of, just very chilled, very relaxed, as a form of weakness nearly. Where, it's not when it's executed in the Brene Brown, I guess, approach to it, which is interesting. I think just wrapping up that dig deep part from a applicable standpoint, which is quite interesting, is how she's reframed it. So she starts with dig deep button being that button of going redlining and being intense, to how she then flipped it to, I think it's, getting deliberate, which is the D, get inspired, which is the I, and then get going, which is the G. And I like that reframing of, all right, rather than going to that natural state of digging deep, which is push through the boundary, it's how do you then look at it from this alternative lens of focusing, essentially, getting knowledge, getting inspiration, and then taking action, which is how I would have probably summarized that reframing, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, and thank you for adding that as well, because that's kind of the pragmatic way of how to do it properly, right? I often don't do that well, because I often just go into a mode of just work yourself to death. It's not good. It's not good. But I mean, tell me about a time where, what I was talking about before, in terms of when it comes to the things that hold you back from living a wholehearted life. Like, let's talk about the compassion for a second. Do you think you're compassionate? Do you think you're always compassionate? How do you maintain that compassion? Do you have boundaries? Do you have do you hold people accountable? I mean, tell me about you and compassion and boundaries.
Yeah, it's a great question. Like, just when you were talking about that, one of the parts that stood out was that notion of when things are going well, and then you nearly self-sabotage it because you want to protect yourself from not experiencing that extreme level of joy or enjoyment or happiness, because it's like, oh, well, this won't last, something bad's about to happen. And I think that's one of the things that I probably take away from it, and especially from a business sense, is staying quite level, just given the nature of uncertainty. And I think it's a relatively effective protection mechanism, from the sense that if you're pretty much in the middle and you don't get too high on the highs or too lows on the lows, you get to stay around a pretty stable 7 or 8 out of 10. But you then also don't get to experience like that ecstasy or like joy, I think, in its most unfiltered form, which feels like, after you read this book, is, all right, well, is that a cost that you're willing, that was a reflection point for me, is that a cost that I'm willing to take ongoing around having a really solid, consistent 7 or 8, which is probably more aligned with, like, call it the stoic type of approach? Or is it better to get a little bit more emotional and on that roller coaster so you can experience a different key? So that kind of stood out. But then going back to the compassion part of it is, I'd call my approach like logical empathy. So it's not like if I'm looking at us two, I think we're probably a little bit different. Like, I think you're more in tune with the emotional side, whereas I think I've been very well practiced in being able to detach myself from it and understanding that there is a really strong emotional component there, but then not letting it impact too much from a pragmatic or action standpoint. So I don't know. I don't think I'm at the full extreme scale of like complete robot, which I know when we do the personality tests and in your color code, I'm a red. I think there's a very extreme version of the red. I don't think I'm at that extreme, but there's parts of that exists. But then there's also the other side. Like I feel it a fair bit when tough things happen. I can't just walk it off. I don't know if that explains it well. I mean, you're laughing at my discomfort in talking about feelings.
You're just like, I can't talk about it. No, but let's sit with it for a second, right? Because
your turn.
It's hilarious.
I'll ask the questions this episode, all right? You just
no. But I want to dig a little bit deeper. But what's funny about what you say is, you know, being in the middle, being a consistent 7 or an 8. As compared to, you know, experiencing the peaks of the peaks and then the troughs of the lows, right? But the lows of the troughs. But I mean, I get it. I also understand the importance of having that consistency. Are you saying that the consistency is almost better than the peaks and the lows? Like it's better to be at a consistent 7 or an 8? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. Like it's just that's the approach that I'm currently enacting. And I don't know whether that is the approach. I think I used to have more of the peaks and the flows, but I don't think I like the volatility of it.
Yeah. Much. I mean, I that made me think of robots again, right?
Yeah.
A robot will always go for consistency over the radical nature of human emotions. It's why when you watch movies like I, Robot or just any movies with AI or artificial intelligence, robots look at humans as being, this is the dumbest thing ever. Look how impulsive they are and how ridiculous their decision-making process is. But then at the end of the movie, when you watch it, it's always, but that's what makes humans so beautiful. It's because they're erratic and they're crazy and they experience all this craziness, right? And then the ultimate thing at the end is always, and that's what makes them so great. So that's what I thought of when you said that. I just thought, but I wonder what the right way is. And here's what I think. I think the right answer is both.
Yeah. It's a mixture.
I think it's a mixture. There are times in our lives where we need to have that, especially during a pandemic, right? When things are kind of all bloody crazy, it's so strategic for you to play it this way. It's so strategic to seek that constant 7 or an 8. My error going into this pandemic is not shifting to a constant 7 or an 8. It's, you know, my going into a pandemic has still been seeking the peaks and as a result experiencing the troughs as well. But that's kind of my mistake going into the pandemic. I think you played this pandemic, you know, as a business person, but also as an individual, a lot more effectively than I have. Because I didn't change my strategy. I kept to well, I'm going to try to achieve even more than before the pandemic. Rah! And then, you know, get punched in the face. So I think that well done, Ali. This is where being a robot helps.
I don't think there's any way to assess how people play a pandemic yet.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I don't think there
measurement criteria on that one, so I can't claim that. But it's
well, just with our situation. I mean, just with our situation. That's all we can work with, right? We can't speak for everyone. We speak for ourselves, right? So.
Yeah,
but look, okay. So that's one thing I wanted to voice, and I think it's really both. You've got to know when to play to the peaks and troughs, and then when you need to, I think, be more stoic about things. I don't think there's just because it's not just one or the other, right?
Yep. I think one of the other things that a topic that I want to chat about is she speaks about scarcity, and there's a line that. It's something along the lines of every morning when we wake up, it's, how much time do I have left? I didn't sleep long enough. You know, like there's this whole notion of scarcity that is so embedded in the way that we live. And I just love that concept especially when we think about it in regards to time and how we allocate that as a resource and bandwidth and even emotional bandwidth or cognitive bandwidth, whatever it is. What were your thoughts on that? Did that get anything triggering?
Yep. I'll complete the thought, Ali, and then I'll share with you mine.
All right. So I think that Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was quite interesting in terms of how do you shift your mindset from scarcity to abundance. And then I think Brene Brown speaks about things like meditation and journaling and using some practical exercises. And I think turning scarcity into gratitude or turning fear into gratitude, which I found another really practical approach to being able to manage something that I think everyone deals with in some extent, especially this year where potentially resources are a little bit more limited. And I know personally that was something that I was doing nearly every day. I was journaling, writing, especially trying to empty out the internal dialogue that was related to fear or scarcity. And then how do you then transform it to gratitude or to abundance, which it's a little bit abstract there, and I don't think I'm explaining it too well. So this is where you
I think you are. Well, this is where I lack knowledge. I've grown up in a family that's always valued abundance and generosity. So I never really have fallen victim to the scarcity mindset, and I don't fall victim to the scarcity mindset often. So I don't know if I'm the best person to find any insights into that for. And then like Brene Brown, when she mentioned that, I was like, wow, that's actually very powerful in terms of gratitude, right? Because, and again, it's because I don't live in that scarcity. I don't live in a scarcity mindset. I just don't. So I don't have a lot of understanding of, I don't know why people feel like I have to destroy this other person or I have to, kill my competition. It's like, well, can't we both do really well? The world of capitalism is not a zero-sum game, right?
It's big enough.
We all can win. It's big enough. Yeah. I don't have to get all the speaking events. I don't have to get all the students who want to learn communication to come to my course. The world is huge. So to me, but I can say that during this pandemic, for me, it's made me worry more. And I haven't been journaling. I haven't been writing down the things I'm grateful for. And that's something that one of my friends brought up to me about a week ago. And I did it, no joke, I've only done it for maybe 3 or 4 days and I've stopped doing it. But in the 3 or 4 days when I just woke up and I wrote down the things I was grateful for, and I approached it like it was terrible, man. I looked at it and I went, oh, this is so lame. Can't believe I'm doing this kind of stupid yoga shit now. What am I even doing? And yoga is actually fantastic too. And I kind of shat on it before and it's actually fantastic. I stretched this morning and I feel great. But again, that mindset, I can't shake it. I'm like, oh, far out. I'm turning into that person who's just, and it was great. And I wrote down that I was grateful that, simple things. I wrote down I was so grateful that I'm grateful for my studio. I'm grateful for having my son who's healthy and my wife who's not sick or anything. And just the act of doing it, I felt more joy already. Now, I don't know where the connection is for doing that and making you feel more abundant. But in saying that, I immediately recognized it. Because it helps you see that those simple things that you have is what makes you feel abundant. You don't feel a sense of abundance because you don't start counting the things you already have. You rarely count the things you don't have. You rarely count the things you do have. You only count the things you don't have. So the process of gratitude is counting the things you currently have, which then leads you to feeling more abundant. Oh, that's how it works. I didn't realize that. I was like, how does this make you feel more abundant? This is stupid. And then it made sense when I talked about it.
The beauty of connecting your own thought.
But to other people, they're like, it's so obvious, you dumbass. I was like, oh, now I get it.
I think this is an interesting topic to explore a little bit more because just naturally, as like you spoke about it there, your family had an impact in how you live with that level of abundance. And I think even as entrepreneurs, it's probably a more natural state for us is growth, abundance, creating things where things didn't really exist before. Like, I wonder from a practical standpoint, because I've had friends ask me about this as well. It's like, well, how do you just go and, increase your salary at work? Or how do you make a proactive move like that rather than competing against somebody else or being in that scarce mindset? And my general approach is, well, how do you create value? And then how do you then get rewarded for that? You know, it doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be anything. Like, it can be, how do you create value even if it's in your own happiness? Like, how do you start a new project? How do you go and learn something new? How do you find a new hobby? You know, spend time with friends or somebody that's going to teach you something. Like, it can happen in so many different shapes or form. But I think that there is a mindset that exists around, well, how am I meant to do that when I've got this, and this, you know, and I've got these obligations? That's where I think that scarcity mindset potentially comes in play. So, and it's a really tricky question, because I agree. I kind of feel more like you, where if there's something there and it's starting to feel a little bit scarce, I'll probably try to figure out a way that changes it, so it goes from a scarce mindset into, all right, how can this be a problem solved, or an action that leads to some sort of abundance, you know, either for myself personally or for the environment or for the people around.
Yeah.
And that's done through a problem solving approach, where decisions are made, actions are then taken, and then a plan is kind of formulated, and then it's like, move ahead. But look, I think it's just one of those really, I don't know if you get it all the time as well, where you might teach somebody about communication and they'll be like, yeah, but I don't have the time to go and do this. It's like already nearly, you see that scarce mindset. Like, how do you then flip that? Because everyone has the same amount of time, right? We're just filling it with different bits and pieces, and the obligations feel different depending on our relative standpoint of where we're at. And I think sometimes there's fear there, there's scarcity there, there's, you know, resource issues.
When you think about this, you just think it back to the normal human nature, where it's pleasure or like pain or gain, right? It's the whole two things that move us in terms of, you say, how do we get someone to actually get out of that scarcity mindset and move into a more abundant mindset? I can only speak to my own experience. For me, every time I fall victim to a scarcity mindset, and when I do, I hate the feeling of it. Like, it causes me so much pain having that mindset that I actually have to get myself out of it. But if someone told me the benefit of doing it, like I told you, for me too, when you told, like, this wasn't only you, but I've had other friends tell me, hey, you should just take 3 minutes every day, just write down a few things that you're grateful for. And I was resistant to that, because I didn't suffer enough from the scarcity mindset, you know. So when I do fall victim to that, which I don't often, but when I do, then I now do it. And I go, oh, actually. So what I'm getting at there is, sometimes you just have to feel the pain of having the scarcity mindset and get to the depths of that pain before you move. Otherwise, you know, the ultimate way to influence people is to have them influence themselves. You know, it's very difficult to force people to do things. But what was interesting in what you just said as well, is that they say scarcity mindset or abundance mindset. And what's become abundantly clear now is, or very clear, is that it's the act of what you focus on that determines which mindset you have. Because you have a scarcity mindset when you're focusing on, oh crap, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough energy. But then if you focus on, if you actually do the gratitude thing and you write down the good things, when you count the things you have, that helps you put on the mindset of someone who's abundant. So to me, that simple act of gratitude is what, like, I'm sorry to labor on this point, but right now is just such a penny drop moment for me. It's which lens do you want to put on? Do you want to put on the scarcity lens by focusing on the things you don't have? Or do you want to put on the abundant thing by focusing on the things you do have?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, again, it just seems so simple to you, but man, this is such a profound moment for me.
But, well, even just from a practical standpoint, I don't know if other people find this, but I've never enjoyed being in a state of like fear or stress when you've got that dialogue, which is from a scarcity mindset, call it. Like I just don't think there's much benefit in that. It never makes you feel good. Like, if you're in tune with that, like, at no point does being fearful or scared or trying to make something smaller feel good. Like I haven't felt it like that. Whereas, yeah, you're right.
Mm.
Being grateful for having a drink right now, a coffee, for doing the podcast, like already straight away, even when you start doing it, just simply like that, you
Yeah.
feel like a little tingling
Well,
feeling, like you start feeling
dude,
so much better.
I just thought I'm so grateful to have a friend who I can talk about stuff like this to. And I just felt kind of tingly.
Yeah, who's your friend?
So, his name's Jason.
Yeah.
It's not you.
It's not this. It's not this.
No, it's not this. This is when I start to write down things. Yeah. These are the things that make me feel scarcity, when I start to fall into the mindset of, God, I hate this. These are the things that rob me of joy of, I've got to talk to that bloody friend of mine that grows a terrible beard.
It's a brilliant beard.
No, I'm actually very envious of your beard. So that's just
one day you'll go through puberty and you'll be able to grow a beard too.
Ali, it won't happen for me. I have accepted that this is it. I mean, I don't know if people who are watching it can see. This is weeks of growing. Weeks.
Years
even. Yeah. No, but then when I get it, it's like this really wispy kind of there's a few strands and
it's like
bloody terrible.
It's very like a picture, like a Bruce Lee movie where it's like the guru, the martial arts sensei, he's always got that twirly beard at the bottom.
Yeah. It's just, but when you go from afar, it looks okay. But when you come close, you're like, wow, it's so stringy.
It's so thin.
It's so vulgar, it's so thin, and it's just it's like the chin version. It's the chin version of balding, and how people kind of, how they keep a few wisps.
Yeah,
it's like a few wisps. It's basically that for the chin. That's what I've got. So yeah, but I'm going to still hang on to it. But I'm hanging on to it. I'm not letting them go.
That's abundance. What I have. That's abundance. You're like, gratitude. I will grow a beard. Like this is going to happen.
I'm going to grow a full-fledged Viking beard. It's just going to look very tragic and sad.
Yep, I believe that.
Well, look, I think to wrap up that point, what's really powerful about that is it's the habit of gratitude, and I don't currently do it as a habit, but I think for me, I'll do it when I need it, and I'll do it when I do feel it. So when I start to feel that scarce mindset, when I do start to feel the anxiety, when I remedy it with just focusing on a few things that I'm grateful for, it's been incredible. It's been incredible for me. Now, one thing that I really loved about this book is that it teaches you how to navigate difficult times with friends. Like this piece of insight, I love this, but I want to read this bit because it spoke to me so much. Where she goes, when you're talking to a friend and you've got a friend that's feeling shame and feeling vulnerable, you want to avoid the following. So don't be the friend that hears the story and then feels shame for you. Because, man, that's so bad. You've done that a few times. When I read this, I was like, Ali does all of this. So the next one, right? So don't feel shame for them, and don't be horrified. So let me just read it the way she reads it, so then I can do it. So we definitely want to avoid the following. The friend who hears the story and actually feels shame for you. She gasps and confirms how horrified you should be. And then there's an awkward silence. Then you have to make her feel better. Don't be the friend who responds with sympathy. I feel so sorry for you. Rather than empathy. I get it. I feel you. I've been there. If you want to see a shame cyclone turn deadly, throw one of these in there. Oh, you poor thing. Or the incredibly passive-aggressive Southern version of sympathy. Oh, bless your heart. The friend who needs you to be the pillar of worthiness and authenticity. She can't help it. She's too disappointed in your imperfections. You've let her down. The friend who is so uncomfortable with vulnerability that she scolds you. How did you let this happen? What were you thinking? Or she looks for someone to blame. Who was that guy? Let's go kick his ass. The friend who is all about making it better out of her own discomfort, refuses to acknowledge that you can actually be crazy and make terrible choices. You're exaggerating. It wasn't that bad. You rock. You're perfect. Everyone loves you. I love you. The friend who confuses connection with the opportunity to one-up you. Oh, you think that's bad? Let me tell you about this situation. So to me, I've never learnt how to navigate these kind of conversations with friends who, these are friends who have gone through a difficult time and they want to share something with you. And I'm the one that usually is, who is it? Let's go kick this person's ass. They should have made you feel this way. Together as a team, we'll be Vikings and annihilate their forces.
Yeah.
I tend to go out of being defensive. Yeah. Because I love my friends.
I'm the one that like contrasts it with like tries to put it in perspective with something a lot worse. It's like, oh yeah, your grandma died. It's like, oh well, she was 95. Like I read this article the other day where like 3 kids died in a car accident, and it's like, again,
more and more, you are the robot. You're like, that is okay. Let me show you the statistic.
That is not robotic at all. That
is robotic. That is, this was the statistic. Last week, 4,000 children died. You should feel sad.
Don't say
just lived a good life.
And I say it like that as well. It's like, just start. So this is my machine learning. It is 4 children have died in the last 10 minutes.
And you go from being like super friendly. You're like, I hear what you're saying, Susan, but this is what you have to realize. You have to realize that 4 children died in the last 10 seconds. Do you know what I mean, Susan? Like, that's what you really have to focus on.
Let's hug. Let us now complete one hug.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was very insightful because I went, wow, that's the kind of go-to moves that I. Whereas what she shared what to do is, her sister Ashley was amazing. She listened and responded with total compassion. She had the courage to tap into her own struggles of worthiness and said, oh man, that's so hard. I've done that dance before. Let me share with you, when I did that dance, and was willing to be vulnerable in sharing a story of when something awful happened, for example. And that to me spoke to, again, why compassion, we spoke at the beginning, is so important. That if you don't set boundaries as a person, it allows you to be less compassionate with others, which then causes us, when someone shares something terrible that they've been through, we go for look at this statistic. It's not that bad. Or, let me tell you something even worse. Or, let's go kick their ass.
Who do we need to beat up?
Yeah. And in that moment, we need to be that compassionate person. However, you won't have the capacity to be compassionate if you don't have boundaries yourself. So to me, that's something we didn't talk about in the beginning, but we mentioned it. I've had to learn how to set boundaries. I used to not set any boundaries. Any of my friends could come to me anytime and whatever you want. No worries. No dramas, right? And it got to the point where I trained my friends to... Well, I taught my friends that there are no boundaries. You can do whatever you want, whatever's mine is yours. And then it got to the point where I started resenting some of my friends because I wasn't protecting my ability to be more compassionate and to maintain compassion. And I actually had to end a friendship. And it was a very close friend of mine, but I had to end it. And I see it as a huge part of it being my fault, and it was my fault because I drew no boundaries. And this person kind of, kept taking and taking and taking to the point where it was my fault. I should have drew some boundaries. I should have drawn some clear boundaries. And then it made me turn for a period of my life into I wasn't a very compassionate person. I wasn't a very abundant person. I became very scarce and very kind of not compassionate. And having since being able to draw those boundaries of, no, I won't do that. No, I can't do this. It's allowed me to do so much more and become so much more compassionate. That was so valuable for me because almost while reading this book, I had a friend come to me with a very difficult experience. And instead of approaching it how I normally would, I was able to approach it with, that sucks. I remember the last time I felt this. And then I shared a feeling, which was so therapeutic. And they actually said, wow, it was so awesome talking to you. Whereas normally I would have said, well, all you have to do is A, B, and C, and let's go kick their ass.
Yeah. That's a very natural one, I think, especially for guys.
Solve it.
Well, let's just solve it. You can write down the emotional aspects of this, and we'll just go and solve it. Like, let's not dig into that, so we both get sad, and then we can't take action. Like, it's a very standard response, I think.
Well, I think but it's one of the things that get in the way of us actually living a better life is not being afraid to feel that emotion with the other person, right? Is not to be afraid to sit in that emotion with the other person for a moment. I think it's actually very therapeutic.
Finish the bit about boundaries. Like, what boundaries have you now set?
Well, for me, I no longer respond to everything that comes my way via emails, via messages on social media. I don't. Because I needed to set that boundary, because before I didn't have that boundary, and I would reply to every single message that came through, respond to every single email that came through. And I would do it the moment those comments came through, the moment those emails came through. Again, no boundaries, right? Whereas now what I do is
that sounds super healthy.
Dude, it was so bad because I would be sitting at the dinner table with my family, and then there'll be a message that came through, and I'll just stop eating, turn to the side, and I respond normally via voice message while I'm with my family. Put a voice message to another person.
Yeah,
but because again, that talks to the point of worthiness. I felt unworthy. I felt like I needed to do this for that person to make me feel like I was worthy. Like, this is what makes me feel like a worthy human being, right?
Yeah.
And now what I do is to put a boundary in place. I go, you know what? Every single week, I'm just going to put aside 1 hour and 30 minutes, so 90 minutes, and sit down and then go through this email box of mine of, being able to give back. And I get it. I'm like 2 to 3 months behind on these emails, but I'm always going to reply to people. But I will do it within my boundaries.
Yeah.
And I will get back to that comment, but it may be late, but I will go back to it, but it's going to be done within these parameters, within these boundaries. And what's crazy is, like, the emails I get back is people like, I say, hey, look, and I've got a passage that I write now to let people know why it's such a late email. But then people just go, wow, I can't believe you even responded.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, the expectation is an immediate response. I'm just grateful that you responded, even though it's, 2.5 months later.
Yeah. I think you've got one of the best no's that I've ever heard. And the way that you go about that, where it's like the most compassionate and nicest no that anyone will ever receive. I don't know.
Do you want to say what it is?
Is it? I don't know. Do you still use it? But it's a really genuine one too.
I do use
it.
it.
You should share it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look, I'm not by any standards like a celebrity or someone famous or anything, but I do probably get more requests from people than the average person, right? And I always get requests for stuff. People want my time. People want to, hey, can I pick your brains for 15 minutes? Hey, can we do a quick 5-minute phone call? Hey, can we go out for a coffee? Hey, can we do this? So I get this a lot. And my reply is, hey, the reply you get 2.5 months later now. But hey, thanks so much for wanting to reach out with me. It means a lot that you want to connect. But I've learned a lesson in the last 12 months. And the more I say yes to other people, the more I'm saying no to my wife, and the more I'm saying no to my son and my mum and my dad and my friends. So I have to learn how to say no. And this is not me not respecting you. This is not me not wanting to hang out with you. But I need to learn how to say yes to my family more this year. I hope you understand. And that, to me, is, again, it's the, like you said, it's because I'm giving them a no with context, as opposed to just saying no,
or
right?
ignoring it.
And ignoring it. Yeah. So to me, that is kind of like an autoresponder kind of thing that helps people understand.
Yeah.
This is why I'm doing it.
You type that out every time. Come on, don't say that it's a copy and paste. It's a
look, I actually do type that, but I do have a copy and paste now that I copy and paste it, so it takes me 2 seconds. But you're right. I used to type that until you taught me about automation, being a robot. Thank you, Ali.
You're now a lovable robot. No, it's
yeah, exactly.
This is AI.
That was a boundary I had to set. And in setting that boundary, I've become a more compassionate person. Whereas when you work me to my bone and I'm giving to my last kind of cent, I become it turns me into a monster. And to that friend of mine that I ended the friendship with, I know they view me as a monster, right? And they view me as a monster because I had no boundaries. it's like anything terrible that happens is the fault of both parties. It's never just one person, right? And I recognize now with hindsight now, I go, wow, it's because I didn't draw any boundaries. I just kept giving and giving and giving. And then there's that point where you cross the boundary and then that compassion turns into bitterness and then resentment. And then at the worst stages of it, almost hatred. You go, how could this person do this to me? Oh my God. And then you kind of get into that kind of that storm. But then in realizing it, wow. So then I've placed so many boundaries now. And I have these boundaries and it's allowed me to live a healthier life.
It's awesome.
How about you? Tell me a boundary you set. Do you have any boundaries? You should be full of boundaries.
Yeah, I've got lots of boundaries. No, I'm probably. It's like we always say, where the yin and yang a little bit is yin yang. Sorry, not yin and yang. We learnt that in one of our previous episodes. Bruce
Lee, come on, mate, come on, striking thoughts. If you haven't listened to that podcast, that was great. Go listen to it. It was the last one.
Well, I probably went more the Tim Ferriss. Again, referring to another one of our other podcasts, the Tim Ferriss approach, which is very binary, and it's either like it's very much yes and no's, So I trained that skill up pretty well, and I think internally to my own alignment, I've got a system in place where I use one of the Derek Sivers ones. It's like, is this a hell yeah? Is it a hell yeah? And if it's not, then it's a no, and that's kind of my decision making process. But I think from a people perspective, it's the same thing. Like, I don't think I get the number of requests that you do, but I still probably, again, get more than average, whereas I probably need a little bit more of that compassionate email responder, whereas I'll let more just go through and I'll let them self-filter, because I think the really important ones are the ones that have depth or meaning. They generally come back again, or you see them from another angle.
Yeah.
Whereas I found myself doing something similar to you, where you invest a fair bit of time that you're not then spending with your family and with your kids and doing the things that you really love, like things that probably didn't really require that much time, if that makes sense. And you start seeing, all right, is this like a level 1 inquiry, a level 2, a level 3? And one of the other things that I did, which again, you kind of inspired, was I created an online course. So that was a really common question that I'd get, is how do you start a business? How do you start a passion-based business? And you can't really do that. You can't give that justice in an hour anyway. So I think that way it's a nicer way to then send someone to a link. And if they then go through that, that's kind of my screening process of, all right, well, now let's catch up, because it's serious. It's worth putting in the time and investment and to then do that. But I think managing inflow, whether it's on a small scale, even at work or with friends or with, from a business sense, it's so important. Because it might just feel like it's going to take you 2 minutes or 30 seconds to respond to this, but it does create more inflow, more responses, more thinking, and we all do have limited bandwidth. So having some type of boundaries and systems in place is very important. Like, I have no notifications on my phone. I don't have any of the apps on my phone. I haven't had that for a few years. So it's built in, where sometimes it might take a week or two to respond to something, but I've found with that approach that the important stuff always finds its way through. Like, very rarely have I had to change the approach and being like, oh geez, I just missed out on something huge because I wasn't onto it quick enough. Just haven't really found that. So I think it's a good recommendation for everyone, even if you're working. Like, focus on the real important, impactful things that you can control, rather than the reactive things. Because that's the other part about dealing with other, like, external inflow, is you're now reacting to what somebody else wants from you. Whereas I'm a pretty big believer in sitting down, listening to yourself, doing what's aligned with you first, and then getting yourself to a pretty good spot, and then helping others from that position. And I know that there's probably mixed views on that approach, where others is like, all right, I'll help everyone, and then I'll then do what I need to do for myself. So
one lesson that resonates with that is one that Mel Robbins taught me. So I was really lucky, and Mel Robbins helped me so much in building my speaking career in the US, and she was so kind to me. She threw me so many leads. She's an amazing human. I wouldn't have had the the amazing career like I did in the US if it wasn't for her guidance and kind of support. And she always said to me, like, she goes, in the morning, Vin, you don't go to your phone first. Don't go to your phone and check your emails as the first thing that you do. That was one of the first things that I used to do when I used to get up in the morning. Immediately check my phone, immediately, go to see what's coming in, and then, being reactive kind of thing, like just, oh, what's coming in? I'll solve this. I'll solve this. Now I just don't look at my emails until I actually need to look at my emails, in terms of I've got a command center over there, which is pretty much where I sit to work. And I'm so close even now to just taking emails off my phone.
Mm-hmm. You call it a command center?
Yeah, I call it a command.
I love that.
It makes it more inspiring. It's where I go to war. Yeah, it's where I go to battle. Yeah,
it's a laptop and a keyboard. It's a computer and a keyboard.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It is three. You bastard! Never speak down to my command center like that. It is 3 27-inch screens.
Yeah, okay? Wow.
Yes, and it's got an ergonomic rest for my wrist when I type as I go to walk with my fingers. Yeah, and it's got an ergonomic rest for my mouse, which is a Logitech MX Master 3, which is one of the most ergonomic and great mouses, like the greatest mouse, because it can connect to 3 devices at once. So I've got my laptop there also open, and my mouse can move from my laptop to my screen, command center, and I can move between. It's amazing, dude. And I've got like this brilliant Bose sound system that plays orchestral war music when I work.
Yeah, wow.
Come on. That's amazing. That's not a laptop and a keyboard. It's way better than that. It's a command center.
Game of Thrones there as well.
Yes, absolutely. How stark. Yeah. Winter is coming. Get working. The monsters are coming. And then that's basically me every morning.
You got to set the scene, right?
You got to set the scene. Yeah, you feel motivated.
I love it.
But again, I think what Ali said was so good. It's pragmatic advice. It's like, for me, in the morning I wake up, I kind of work on the things I want to work on first, and then I jump into what the world wants from me. I try to serve myself before I serve everybody else. And again, in serving yourself first, in having the boundaries like Brene has researched and discovered, when you've got more of these boundaries that you set, you become more compassionate, you become more kind, you become a nicer human being. And don't be surprised if you become more joyful as a result and more happy. Often we're less happy. And again, this is kind of words from Brene Brown, just paraphrased. But when you learn to have more of these boundaries, you're looking after yourself more, which actually leads to you being more happy. And one of the things that I definitely started to let go of during this whole pandemic is I started to look after myself a lot less. And in trying to get back to that, I'm feeling myself feeling more happiness slowly. I mean, I wasn't feeling very happy, just a couple of weeks ago, because, and this is another point that we'll move to, and then I'd love to throw you the ball in the court, but something Brene speaks about that I really connected with is that she wrote, this is not exactly as she says it, but she goes, we often think that happiness and joy lives in the extraordinary. And we forget that joy and happiness also lives in the ordinary. That's me. I overvalue extraordinary. And I go, oh, I need to create the most extravagant trip for the family. Oh, damn it, we can't go to New Zealand and stay at this beautiful place that I wanted to stay at that has no cell reception. So we have to do like a strategic week of groceries and create that excitement in the grocery store because we're not going to allow ourselves to come back down. We're just going to go up once. Like I want to make everything extravagant. So then as a result of that, I go, well, because we can't do that, let's do nothing then. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do anything because we can't do the extraordinary. So stuff it.
Yeah.
And then when I read that, I went, damn it, Vin, there's actually joy and happiness in the ordinary, right? And to me, I used to look at these things as ordinary. I used to go, what are you going to do, Vin? Travel around your own state? Well, that's bloody ordinary. That's boring as bat poo, right? But then I was like, okay, Brene, I will take your words, absorb them, and then try to apply. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do the thing I see really like I used to perceive this as being really boring. And I go, oh, yeah, you can go camping, get a motorhome or something. You know, is that what you do when you get old and get a motorhome and drive around the country? And I go, that's so ordinary. But I took a leaf out of this book and went, all right, I'm going to go and find joy in the ordinary. So I hired a motorhome, a really old motorhome, and said, let's go drive around our own state.
That's hilarious. Well, right now in a global pandemic, I think that is pretty extraordinary. Like everyone's changing their approach.
But in my world, that this is something that I'm doing that's rather ordinary, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to try. Like I haven't done it. I'm doing that next week as I hired a motorhome for a week, and I'm going to go try to find joy in the little things in life, in the cooking of this meal with my family as we're on the road, right? It's just...
One of the thoughts that stood out there is this line of when we read things and we see other approaches and how we feel that we need to then also test it and give it a try. Like, I was just thinking about what you were saying there. And I think that there's something special about the fact that you want to make everything extraordinary. And maybe that's part of the personality type. Like, are you still that person if you then go too far the other way? And this is a really interesting thing because I love transformation and like testing on different approaches and styles and then seeing what works. But there's also this line around, well, was it better the way that I was doing it previously? And does that add value to myself and to everyone around me? Because, or do I need to try on this new suit of contentment or what you're looking for at the moment? What's your ordinary? Like, how do you...
I hate using this answer because it's so generic now. It's become trite between us. But the answer's both. It's both. That's my ghost voice. If you're wondering, by the way, why does the ghost voice always have to be shaky? Why can't they have great projection and be clear with their message? Ghosts are terrible communicators. It's terrible. This is the answer to life. It's not even
especially
scary.
For something that's meant to be scary. Yeah, it's true.
I know it's comedic. If you came to me like that as a ghost, I would love in your no, to be truthful, if there was a ghost that did that, I'd shit myself. But back to what you're saying, right? Back to what you're saying, in that the danger for someone like me who only finds joy and happiness in the extraordinary is that I don't find joy in the ordinary as a result. And life cannot be extraordinary at all times. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not. So the danger of that is that you fall victim to monotony when you're mowing the lawn and trying to enjoy the process of just mowing the lawn, or you're trying to just sit and play with your child. You go, I feel like we could be playing harder. I feel like we could be playing in a way more extraordinary way. Whereas my son just goes, no, but I just like climbing on the monkey bars for non-stop repetitively. Right? Or I just want to play this animal game and build the fence, tear it down and build it again. And then like to me, I'm like, but we could be doing way more extraordinary things, son. You know, and then that robs me of the joy in the moment.
Yeah.
And this happens to me a lot, Ali. Like, it's like it just always happens to me. I have to make things extraordinary. But to me, I'm trying to learn both. Look, it's not going to make me stop seeking out these extraordinary experiences with my family. But I want to get to the point in my life where I can find joy and happiness in the extraordinary, but also find joy and happiness in just being.
Yeah. I used to feel this a lot, where people would ask me, like, what's your biggest fear? And I had a relatively strange answer to it, because mine was boredom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't the usual answer, but when you were talking there, I think it makes sense what you're trying to unlock right now, so that you're not always searching. Because the reality is, if you're driven by say mine, which was boredom, at some point you will test all the different experiences and you will still end up at that point of boredom. And I think the only antidote to that is contentment in the present moment. And I think it has a lot to do with the journey I've kind of gone down the last 5 years around, you know,
Well,
getting a
can
little
you
bit
can you
more-
talk to that? Can you talk
Yeah.
to that? Because contentment is, I think, the methodology on how to feel joy and happiness in the ordinary.
Yeah.
Because when you're content, that is the pragmatic thing that allows you to feel happiness and joy in the ordinary.
Yep.
Talk to it.
Yeah, so I think my history would have been just always starting something new and switching between things, having 10 things on the go at any given time, flipping around. Like back then, even when in the younger days, it was everything had to be pretty extreme. You know, it was like if we go out with friends and we were partying back then, it's like I had to be the first one there, the last one to leave. If it's travel, it was the same thing. It's like not just your usual thing. It would be book in a trip 24 hours before it and then go and then just deal with the chaos of everything that happens there. And I think after a little while, it sort of just became a bit exhausting because you run out of those adrenaline building activities and it doesn't really become all that sustainable. So as I was going down that path, and even like in the entrepreneurship world, like I would start these things that had promise, but then as soon as I got a little bit bored or I felt like I could conceptualize it, it would be, nah, let's do the next thing. Let's do the new thing. And then you'd end up with 4 or 5 things that were all relatively average. And I started learning, going down that growth journey of learning, all right, well, you need a mixture of variety and uncertainty, but then you also need some stability and some depth and a little bit more focus because it wasn't sustainable the other way. And then that's when I started searching. It's like, all right, well, what's the most practical approach to be able to do this? And now it's become very cliche, but 5-6 years ago, things like meditation, all that were pretty much out there, like doing breathing exercises and sitting down for 20-30 minutes. It wasn't that common. It was a little bit out there. Now I think it's amazing that it's more accepted, but I think the reason why it's more accepted is because people are using it for practicality. It's not used because it's spiritual or it's rah-rah or, it's this airy fairy thing.
It's not virtue signaling, right? Sometimes, people virtue signal. They're like, oh, look how many books I've read. Look how long I've meditated for. Because you just want to show people I'm a very kind of Zen being. Yeah. That's right.
It's like with everything, it gets turned into something that, becomes egoic. It's like, even when you speak to people that are, I'm vegan now, or I'm a vegetarian, it like starts as this thing, it's about health, but then it becomes this badge of honor.
I'm better than you because I'm doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you eat meat. It's like, oh, you you don't sit there cross-legged for 4 hours a day. Like you're obviously, I think that's where it becomes dangerous. But there's practical application to all these things. Like if you look at a few of the ones that we've spoken about, where journaling, gratitude practice, meditation, like if you told people that this becomes nearly a mainstream approach to performance by being counterintuitive 5-10 years ago, you would have been probably laughed out. Like imagine working at, I don't know, I'll pick a big, like KPMG, and then you take a 30-minute meditation break in your seat in the 2000s while you're on track to becoming partner. Like they'd be like, all right, well, see you later, Vin. Like, that's not what we do here. We work 90-hour days if you want to be partner. Like, but I think even my dad, like now who meditates all the time and does all of these things. And if I told him that I wanted to meditate and things like that 15 years ago, he would have slapped me in the face. Yeah. It's so I think there are these practical approaches that are being written about pretty consistently and that we're seeing adopted by everyone, right? Like if you look at meditation, for example, I don't think there is now a podcast that you'll listen to where a high performer, in quotation marks, when they're asked what their morning routine is, doesn't include some form of meditation, just to quieten the mind or whatever it is. Like even LeBron James, he's on the Calm app and he does his bit. They're like these. I think it's pretty important. And even just the simple act of breathing, like that's been my next evolution. I think we've spoken about it in one of the other podcasts, but just getting into the practice and being aware of deep and slow breathing and how much of an impact that has for me personally. Like I can tell when I'm off center just by observing how I'm breathing. It's a little bit shallower, a little bit quicker, probably more breaths per minute. The mind's a little bit more active. And then it took ages to start learning that if you slow that breathing down, that's actually the antidote to being overwhelmed or feeling a little bit of anxiety or uncertainty or fear or scarcity, all the things that we're speaking about. There is a super simple antidote, and it's just breathing deeply and slowly, having a mantra or counting your breaths for 5-10 minutes. And it just resets everything. It's like a reboot, system reboot. Off you go. Works nearly every single time. Free. You can do it anywhere. Like what an awesome tool. It's got such applicability.
And I mean, I want to speak to that for a second, because I want to show you something. For people who can't see this, it's going to be a bit lame, but I want to show people something. And it's this here. Here we go. Give me a second. For me, it's really, I know the value of all of this. However, it's really hard for me to stay consistent with all of these things. So I have to have accountability. So I've got a group of my really close friends here in Adelaide, and I just said to them, look, I know you guys struggle with this too, but every day we keep each other accountable. So we've got these little green check marks when we've done 20 minutes of meditation. We've got these green check marks, like I posted mine this morning, where I said I did 20 minutes of meditation and I did my Wim Hof, and all of this you introduced to all of us. And every day, my close friends and I, we always, and notice how I didn't include you in this, obviously, Ali, just so you know your place. No, and if you feel that, I don't mean to make you feel bad. It's just I don't care about you. But more, it's because you do this naturally so well.
Anyway, I don't want to be a part of it anyway.
Yeah. No, this group is, you need to be cool to be a part of this group. You need to be able to grow wispy beards. If you can grow a full beard, you're out. But
no, that's awesome.
But to me, every morning that I don't want to do this, and then I see my best mate Lenny do it, I'm like, damn it, he's done it. I need to do it. I can't let the team down. So to me, I say this and want to, be a little vulnerable and share with you that even though I'm a believer of this and I know the benefits of this, if I don't have that little accountability group with my best mates, I won't do it. I won't do it. I just won't do it. So to me, I wanted to share that just by letting people know, because some people do view me as, he's a high performer. Yes and no. Sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. And I need structures in place to keep me consistent. And I have to tell you, we've been doing this now for months, and just breathing and just meditating, dude, it's just, my mind is so much clearer, and it allows me to absorb the book that I'm reading. Whereas before, my mind was so busy that every time I was reading, it was just noise. Whereas now, back to what you were saying, original point, I'm actually reading to apply. I'm not just reading for the sake of acquiring knowledge. I'm reading to actually apply. I'm absorbing. So every time I read books now, I'm like, well, where's the place where I can apply this? Okay, well, let's review what you used to see as ordinary. Okay, you used to review people who went caravanning and motorhomes as very ordinary. Why don't you try it?
Yeah.
And why don't you explore that with an open mind and an open heart, as being so damn judgmental all the time? Yeah. And I give myself permission. Like I said to myself, it's okay if you do this and it was the most boring thing you've ever done and you hated it. But what if it's one of the most amazing things, and because of your bloody ego, you're not willing to give it a chance? So,
That's awesome. I think having those accountability tools is so important. Like you've got it there. What you're doing is, I think, one of the most effective methods of changing a habit, which is having a group to hold you socially accountable, where you're letting down other people if you don't do it. The other one that I found recently that's pretty good for a habit change are apps that give you a streak. So it tells you if you've done it for 4 days in a row, 8 days in a row, 10 days in a row, because there's something subconsciously in all of us that doesn't want to break a streak. Once you get to 50 days or 80 days, it's so painful to then start back to zero. But I think with habit change, that's definitely, especially at the start before the habit becomes autonomous, is you really need to trick yourself into the value of going down that path of adopting the new behavior. And I think that's the other thing that's really important is we don't get taught how to change habits.
Yeah, we don't.
And how to then embed a new practice. But now, like what you just shared there, having a social accountability group, having an app that maybe makes it a little bit easier. Like that whole thing around if you're trying to quit eating Tim Tams, just make it easy for yourself. Don't have Tim Tams in the house. Like there's like systemizing.
I don't know how I feel about that one though. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I have Tim Tams in the house. I have Tim Tams. To me, that is a crucial item to have. Chocolates.
I've got that as well. Like that's why I brought it up because it's one that
let's not
at a later stage. We don't have to worry about it. We're not talking about changing all habits.
That's a terrible example. Let's not have chocolate in the house. What are you, a robot?
That's that's going to be our WhatsApp group when we're like, all right, the Tim Tabs are starting to give me acid reflux. We need to hold ourselves accountable here.
Sorry, I stopped you. I stopped you in the middle of a very important point. Go ahead. Keep going. Have systems in place.
You need to I think it's having systems in place. And one of the other things that I think is very effective is, I can't remember where I read it, but writing a narrative and a story to yourself around why this habit change is important. Like, we haven't spoken about this, but a couple of years ago, I stopped. I quite enjoyed a cigarette and also an alcoholic beverage, and I stopped doing them both essentially on the same day. And a lot of that was based around the narrative, and it was helped by, I think I was out having a smoke, and at the time my son was like, I'd quit smoking for a couple of years for the children. I'm like, I don't want to, because my parents smoked. I'm like, I don't want them to see me smoking. And I picked it back up. And then one of the days when my son was old enough to speak, he came outside and he's like, Dad, I don't want you to die from smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, all right, well, that's a pretty powerful thing for you to say. And I think I'll put that cigarette out. That was the last one. But then at the same time, I had to then really dissect that habit change around, all right, well, quite enjoy having a cigarette if I'm having a beer. And I quite enjoy having a beer with a cigarette. So these are both linked. And if I'm going to give away one, funnily enough, it's probably going to be easier to give away both if I'm going to go down that path. And then I have to write a narrative there. And it's like, all right, well, what does smoking and drinking potentially cost me? And really dissecting that around, all right, well, it could be health. It could be voice. It could be, getting sick a little bit more often, being hungover occasionally from having too many beers, like all these being less effective then as an entrepreneur. And I was able to make this really compelling narrative around why it was important to then change that habit. And once I believed that and internalized it, it made it easier to then change that habit or that approach. But I think that there is that practical approach to habit changes and behavioral changes.
Did you write it out? Did you actually write all of this out?
Yeah, I wrote it out. So I think I had like 2 or 3 habits that I wanted to change in my routine at that point. So one was,
wow, I really like that.
Yeah.
Well, I need to do that with, I think, exercise and health, because I've always, jumped on that bandwagon, fallen off it, jump back on it, fallen off it, jump back on it. And I think a huge part of that reason is because I'm not taking advantage of the streaks idea. I really like that. And I've got an idea that I want to share with you that I'm going to try. And then the second thing is, I don't think I've built a narrative around it that's compelling enough.
Yeah.
So thanks, Ali. That was really cool.
I think the narrative one came potentially from Oprah, or it was somebody speaking about Oprah. And they were saying you look at Oprah's history, where being a talk show host, being Oprah, being all the things, she's the best in the world, right? Entrepreneur, connector, people loving her on that scale. But they mentioned that the one thing that Oprah always struggled with was weight. It was managing her health. Like Oprah she would fluctuate. She'd go higher or lower, higher or lower. It might've been Tony Robbins speaking about this. And
that's me. Yeah.
And then going through that. And I think the reasoning was that Oprah's narrative. Like, whereas one was linked around purpose, impact, making a difference, all these people relying on her, you know, why she was killing it at that one side, but then would kind of fluctuate with health, because being somebody that probably acts in the interest of others and wanting to make an impact, it was, well, that's just my body. I can deal with that later, or whatever it is. But that's what got me thinking down that path. Like, you know, that story is, it is what it is. But I think it was more around that. It's like, all right, well, to make that change, it needs to be a very compelling story and narrative, as a tool or a methodology for habit changes, and writing it out, posting it somewhere is pretty important.
We should probably review the next book we should do is probably Atomic Habits. I love that book.
Yeah, habit change books are amazing.
Yeah, I love it. And what I want to say to you is, what I'm going to try is, I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to do that process of just writing things out as to, you know, building a narrative and a story around why that's important for me. I'm going to try it, and I'll let you know if it's great or if it's nonsense. And the second thing I'll try as well, which is, I love the streak idea. So I already bought a piece of paper for this, and I can't believe that's what you said. And I'm in the process of trying to do something, but I got a really big piece of paper from Officeworks. And I used the ruler, drew every single week for next year. And every single week that I exercise 4 times, I'm going to put like a little sticker on that week. Yeah. And I wanted to use momentum to keep me to a schedule. Because I can imagine if you've done like, you know, 8 weeks already, and you put a sticker up every week, and then you've got that big piece of paper in your house. Every time you walk down the stairs, you see it. I want to try to get through a full year exercising at least 4 times a week. And I want to try that streak idea. So thanks for that, man. That's really cool. I'm excited to I'm actually going online right now looking for some really cool, you know, stickers.
Well, when you were saying that, one of the ones that stood out was Jerry Seinfeld was talking about this when he writes jokes, is he has a calendar. And I think he once got asked, is like, how do you become Jerry Seinfeld? How do you become an amazing comedian? And he's like, I have a calendar, and I put a cross on that calendar every day that I write jokes. And he has a streak for like 20 years, just crossing it off, just like red cross. And that's all it takes. It might only be 1 week. It might be 10 jokes, it'll be hours, but it's like every single day I go and write a joke, and it's visual, it's on the wall, you give it the cross, and off you go. I'm like, that's such a simple and practical approach.
But I mean, imagine the momentum you feel at year 19, and you're like, I don't feel like writing a joke today. Of course you're going to write the joke today. Because what, are you going to ruin a 19-year streak because you kind of feel lazy today? That is so powerful. That is brilliant. Well look, I do want to bring this back to the original point that kind of raised this whole rabbit hole that we jumped in. Yeah. But it's the idea between happiness and joy, right? And I love what Brene Brown wrote here, where she and I'm just going to read what she wrote, because I think it's so eloquently written. I also learned that neither joy nor happiness is a constant. No one feels happy all the time or joyful all the time. Both experiences come and go. Happiness is attached to external situations and events, and it seems to ebb and flow as those circumstances come and go. Joy seems to be constantly tethered to our hearts by spirit and gratitude. But our actual experiences of joy, these intense feelings of deep spiritual connection and pleasure, sees us in a very vulnerable way. I love that she kind of separated joy and happiness. That, you know, happiness is more about external, joy is a bit more of, you know, internal spiritual feelings. Yeah. And I loved it, because I think I seek happiness and not joy, because I seek a lot of external things. I think, again, it's like how things bring me often a lot of joy, and I like material things, like stuff. Stuff brings me joy, stuff brings me happiness, and material things bring me happiness. But I'm trying to seek more joy in my life. And then she goes on to write about how often that joy, that kind of inner feeling, it's from the more ordinary things, where extraordinary seems to, you know, bring that peak happiness. Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure I share that, because it gives a bit of context, right? In that I know how to get happy, but I want to learn how to become more joyful, because I think I don't know how to be joyful. this book revealed that to me, and it was sad, man. It was kind of a moment when I read it. I was like, wow, I'm very good at feeling these sharp peaks of happiness, and I'm very good at creating those moments for my family. But I'm not good at creating for my family this kind of ongoing joyful feeling. That, again, doesn't happen all the time, but I'm not very good at that side of it. And it made me go, wow, I want to get better at this. I want to create more joy for my wife and for my son and I in everyday life.
I think just you speaking about that, it feels like joy is the hardest one to find.
It is.
Like if I look at all the people that I know, I think we all know people that are happy, or we would say that, oh yeah, they're pretty happy. But I can't think of many where I would say that they've got joy, like other than the kids. Like, when I look at our little ones, they live in a world of joy.
They do.
And they have it on their face. You can see it. It's a really hard one to describe, but we know when we're seeing joy, right?
Yes.
Whereas I don't see joy in many adults. I don't know
sad,
if you do.
Isn't that just sad, man?
So sad.
Dude, I'm feeling sad listening to you say this, because yesterday...
We don't have joy right now when we're saying it.
Yeah, we're not even bloody happy right now. This is just two depressed blokes just talking. But like yesterday, right?
A really dark turn.
It's just a really just sadness. But yesterday, I remember this look on my son's face. It's funny because one of the things that brings my son immense joy is something that brings me immense pain. But as I get into the water and jump into the pool, like, you know, I do that. I'm not the guy that jumps into the pool and just gets in and just deals with the cold, right? It was a really hot day, but I go into the pool and I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. This is so cold, right? But when my son, and when my son experiences the cold, though, when he gets into the water, every step he takes brings this huge smile to his face. Like, you're like, he's just so cold, but he's enjoying it. I'm on the other end going, oh my God, I hate this, right? And I couldn't get the look of his face out of my head, because I'm like, you are feeling so much joy from something simple as getting into the water and it's a little bit cold. Whereas I'm over here, old grumpy, old serious dad is just, every step that goes a bit further is just atrocious. It's awful. I hate this feeling. And I just went, wow, how sad is it being me? How happy and joyful is it being you little beautiful soul? And to me, that was just such a two worlds, one experience, two complete worlds of kind of experience, right? How do the children stay so joyful, and how do we not, as adults, rob them of this joy as they grow?
Yeah. Well, you speaking about that, like when you look at the dots connecting there, it's because I don't think they're as connected to the external. Like, I think if we're connected to the external, like it's they're nearly mutually exclusive, right? I don't think you can be fully connected to the external and not the present moment and experience joy. Maybe that's...
I'll give you an example of that being true right now. I'll tell you right now, okay? My son doesn't care what car he's sitting in.
Yeah. You do.
Right, I've got a bit of a brum brum car, and
a brum brum
his
car.
joy that's what he says. His joy of sitting in that car.
When you went to the dealer and you asked them for
do you have a brum brum car? I don't want a vroom vroom car. I want a brum brum car.
And I will pay top dollar for it.
I will pay double the price if you give me a brum brum, not a vroom vroom. Because I want the bass. Brum brum is a brum brum, not a vroom vroom. Yeah. Anyway, so my son, when he's sitting in like, my parents come over to visit, and sometimes they take him into their car, and you know, it's an old car, and like, he doesn't care. He just doesn't care. And I've sat with him in both cars, and to him, it's like, he doesn't care. There's no attachment to the external, right? Or when we dress him up nicely, what we determine is, you know, like a little cute little suit that's comfortable. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care that he's got these really cool Nike kicks, right? Whereas we buy him all these things because we care. Whereas to him, he's the happiest when he's just when he's nude. He loves running around the house just naked. He's like, And he's in his most
joy.
Ali, maybe that is the key. Maybe we need to just run around in the nude.
That's if you take one practical takeaway from this episode.
No, more people are going to get arrested for public indecency. And then maybe while we're getting arrested as like the police officers are arresting us, we're like, but that's because you're too serious. You're taking life too seriously. You need to listen to Ali and Vin's podcast.
But what you just said there, that's what society conditions us for.
Oh, gosh.
You know, like as funny as that sounds, like if you went outside and started being super happy running around naked in your street, you would end up in a jail cell. Whereas if your kid does it, it's cute and it's adorable and they're just living joyfully, right? Like, how is that fair?
What? Well, hang on a second. What age does it go cross the line from being cute to being frightening? What age is that? I think, I don't know.
And who was the person that got to judge that and create that as a rule? Like, but I think that's what we get. We get trained. It's like designed to not experience joy. And if you ask somebody, like if you're that person in a park with your hands up, taking in the sunshine and the flowers, what's every single person walking by going to be saying? That person's crazy,
crackhead.
Right?
It's on drugs.
They're on ice or whatever it is. It's like, but everyone's conditioned that, like conditioned to have that response that we have to be serious. Like the word, you have to act professionally.
Yeah, you're gonna be a professional.
Be serious, right? You need to talk. You can't swear. You can't actually say what you feel or how you'd normally approach life. Like, and that's what we then do to our kids. Is we send them to institutions like schools.
God, that makes me feel so sad.
But then,
so do we do this to our children? I mean,
well, I think
that's just tragic.
We collectively do it to ourselves, I guess. Because when you were talking about joy and happiness, I think it struck a chord with me. It probably I'm sure it'll strike a chord with everyone listening there. Is like if you sat there and did an assessment on yourself, how much of your day are you living in unbridled joy? Like
0% often.
Like this right now, what we're doing is about as close as,
Yeah, this feels good. This feels good, man. I like this.
It feels good, right? But it's still got external connection, like still.
Well, but that's the thing. But that's why I've had to reduce
that connection running.
But I've also had to reduce that external thing, right? In terms of, it's like something simple as, when we run it through this platform, you can see comments come through, right? And it's, you get nice comments and sometimes you get, not so nice comments. And it's hard to go, I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to focus on this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't like, how do kids keep their joyfulness? How do we help our children keep that joy and not lose it? And I think a huge part of it is by us as adults learning how to be more joyful.
Yeah.
And learning how to keep some of that as opposed to allowing society to erode all of it.
And just as you were saying that, something again stood out in this book is I think Brene Brown talks that the way to joy is potentially play and creativity.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yep. And you look at that, like how many of us play? And I love that. That's probably my favorite part in the entire book when she speaks about play and creativity. And
well, can you talk to it more, and then let's discuss this.
Let's do both of them, right, separately. So play is first of all, she speaks about adults just generally not prioritizing play. If you look at the three that are always spoken about, it's work, rest, and play. And she speaks about rest as well and the importance of rest. But we're very conditioned, especially as adults, to be productive. And probably work gets the lion's share, then rest because we're completely spent, then rest gets the next bit. But play gets very deprioritized for a lot of people, especially probably after the age of, say, 18 or 20 in a Western society. You stop. Like I think if I looked at my play graph up until I was at uni, super high, and then it goes on a downward trend until you then reprioritize. And I think I did start to reprioritize it a little bit. Like if I look at the game of entrepreneurship opposed to working, to me that feels a little bit more like play. even though it's not always play, but it feels more like a game that you're playing. I don't think it taps into unbridled joy as much as it probably could, because there's still an element of seriousness to it. Then you start getting responsible for the entity and the customers and the business, but it still felt a lot more playful to when I was working previously in a more corporate style environment where you had to act a certain way, you had to speak a certain way, you had to,
dress a certain way.
Dress a certain way. You're more part of an embedded culture. Whereas just recently in the pandemic, I think play was one of the natural solutions that I started gravitating to in that downtime. It was doing a lot more stuff that was very much project-based or fun-based, whether it was doing the podcast with you, where we weren't thinking about the external outcomes of it as much. Building Lego, which started off building Lego with my kids until I realized they were slowing me down. So I just went solo. It was much more enjoyable. But,
no, he's not joking, because you're not even doing like these little castles like out of Lego. You're building like the Taj Mahal and spending $500 on a Lego set, which to me, I was just like, what the hell? So stupid, man.
It's not stupid. You're stupid.
It is. You're stupid. You're stupid for calling me stupid.
You're stupid for calling Lego stupid.
Yeah.
This just ends up in a fight. It's like screen just goes blank. We just start punching each other through the screen. But play just became such a big tool to, I think, deal with lockdown, especially being in Victoria when we were in lockdown for like 6 months. And now that the world's opening back up again, like I've just really resonated with playing golf. Again, it's that word playing, like playing Lego. You don't, you play golf. It's like, what in your life are you doing that has the word play before it? You play the piano, you play the guitar. Like, what's there? And I think, again, going back to the practical, it's like doing the assessment of your time during a week and how much time is you play. How much of that is play? Like, and the beauty thing about, again, I think play is a little bit like meditation, where if you invest time into play, it will make other parts of your life better. I'm sure, and I think Brene Brown speaks about it, there is a high correlation of joy, happiness, probably mental health, performance even at work, for those people that are able to prioritize play. But unfortunately, a lot of our world doesn't reward play. It actually punishes it. Like if you go take a day off work and say, I'm going to go play a round of golf, your boss is trained to think that you're not being productive, you're hurting the company. Whereas you may just really need that. And we have to lie about it. Like people take sickies to go and do the things that they enjoy because they're even worried about taking leave for it. Whereas, and then we kind of wonder why are we living in this world where, maybe there isn't all that much joy and, more people are medicating themselves and, looking for other solutions to get that feeling when, who knows, is the solution a little bit of play and a little bit of creativity, a little bit of time by yourself? And can we still be a productive society while doing that?
I really needed you to say that, because reading it for me wasn't enough. You just saying that to me right now, it felt like the lesson sunk in a lot more than when I read the book. So thanks, man. That was really good.
No, man.
And you know what also made me think of, Ali, is that, see, again, I know this, but there are things that get in the way of it that we don't talk about, right? See, I know that we should play more. I know that play leads to joy. But I'll give you an example. You were able to do it and you weren't obstructed. Nothing was in your way and you played and you felt joy. During this pandemic, I also indulged in a few playful things where, like, I played games.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a gamer and I played Assassin's Creed Vikings. It's a great game, by the way. And I'd be enjoying it, feeling joy while I'm playing it, and it was great. But then the moment I clocked an hour on it and then I realized it's been an hour, then I stopped playing. Then after that, I beat myself up.
Yeah.
I say to myself, I can't believe you just played an hour and a half or an hour of Assassin's Creed Vikings. I know it's a really good game, but I can't bloody believe you. You make me sick, man. You could have spent that time with your child. You could have spent that time exercising. You could have spent that time going to read a book. You could have spent that time getting to back some of the emails. And then I just attack the crap out of myself.
Yeah.
And then I share that because not only is there a kind of professional pressure, there's a societal pressure, there's also a cultural pressure for me as well. In that when we were growing up as kids, we weren't encouraged to play. It's either you go down to the farm and you work and you be productive and you make money, or you're studying to become a doctor, right? And it's those two gears. Or you should be going to Kumon classes to learn extra math and become better at math, or you should go into chemistry classes on Sunday. It was embedded from us since a young age in that when we're laughing and running around having a good time, no, they should be studying. What are they doing? So to me, I haven't successfully been able to allow myself to play freely. I will play and feel joy in the moment, but then right after that, I beat myself up.
Yep.
So I'm still going through that process of being kinder to myself and undoing some of that, because every time I play, I feel bad almost immediately after.
It's funny when you were saying that. I was talking about the Lego example. So that started
I just talked about something really emotional. He just says it's funny. See that? No, I'm kidding. It's okay. It's okay. I know I'm talking to a robot, but what's funny?
Yeah, it's funny that you had that really deep insight that was very, very powerful. But
just made me spit out water.
We're going to loop back to that point though, for sure.
Okay.
But it's around that, because when you were saying that about how you were punishing yourself and your play didn't just become purposeless because of all the other things before it. The same thing happened with the Lego. Like, it started off as playing Lego with the kids, and then it turned into, now I have to build Lego. I need to complete the Lego. I'll do a bag a day of Lego. Then it was, I'll listen to an Audible while I build the Lego. So now I can now learn while I'm building Lego. And then this whole thing, like, still really enjoyable, but I couldn't just commit to just playing Lego fully presently by itself without there being some other part of progress there, which I think is really interesting that we both did the same thing with play, where we couldn't just go and play without there being some sort of cost or progression or outcome. And that's the thing that kids don't do when we're watching kids. There's no end game.
Yeah.
It's just play. It's play, then it's like, eat. I'm hungry. Need to eat. And it's like, I'm bored. I'll play again. Like, it's like there's no plan. Whereas,
but I know this, and I told you this, and you thought I was ridiculous. But to me, someone said to me, Vin, you need to just relax and do things that don't require to think. Like, you should go do gardening, mow the lawn or something. Yeah. So then I went out, I researched the best lawnmower, the best edge trimmer, the best leaf blower, and then I didn't really know how to do it. So then I did an online course on how to garden and mow the lawn. And I watched like a 40-minute video on how to mow the lawn properly, learned about like all these stupid things. And then I didn't enjoy the process. I was like, damn it, that was too stressful. What are they talking about? Gardening is like relaxing. The whole time I couldn't even cut the edge straight. And when I cut it, it looked like I gave someone a bad haircut. So I had to cut more hair off. And in the end, there was no hair left. This is like the most stressful thing in the world.
I love that. And I love when you told me how you started that story when we were chatting on that phone call. You're like, oh, Hollyman has been awesome. Like, I've just been getting back to the roots. Like, I'm just gardening. I'm so zen. And then the conversation of being about you doing a short course on how to garden, spending 4 hours at Bunnings trying to find the most optimized. But
oh man.
Yeah. So
it's like, okay, so the key line there is, how do you just be?
Play. Or be. Yeah.
And just play. But I think, really connected to play. And I love the hierarchy of, we prioritize work, and then we have to prioritize rest after that because we work ourselves to the bone. And then we never get to that deeper level of play. And play is where creativity is unlocked, right? Because, but I want to sit on this for a little while longer. How do you play successfully, right? And again, we look to our children for that. And it's playing without all these external expectations.
Yep.
Man,
I think
kids are bloody amazing.
I think we have to take baby steps, funnily enough,
We do.
to relearn how to play. And we nearly need to do it from the extreme standpoint of scheduling in play. It's because it's something so unnatural to how we operate. That's actually a really beautiful thing about golf. I'll go back to golf, where you're nearly forced to schedule it in if you're a golfer, because you have to drive to the course, you have to pre-book it in. But then once you're there, it's one of the unique things where there's very little distractions. Like golf nearly has these rules factored in. Like you can't be on your phone. You can't do any of these other things. Like it's literally that activity. Like once you're out in the golf course, you've got to get through the 18 holes. So there's enough structure, enough boundaries. But then within that, you get the beauty of connection. You get 3 or 4 people that you can then chat to. You can even not talk to them if you want. Hit your ball really far away and sit there in your own thoughts. Like you could cycle how you need to, but it's structured play, because that's all you're doing once you're out there. And the best rounds of golf is when you do have the play mindset. The worst rounds of golf are when you're trying to shoot a score and you're worried about your golf swing and about how you're performing against your playing partners. Like they become the least enjoyable rounds. Whereas every time you speak to a golfer, it's like, how do you play? It's like, I didn't have anything on my mind, just swinging the club freely. I wasn't thinking about anything. I had no expectations on the score. Like you could turn it into this beautiful art of play. I think surfers do this really well too. Like I don't surf myself. If I lived close to the beach, I definitely would, because it just seems like one of those things. Like you go out into the ocean, it's unpredictable. You're there by yourself with your board, 2-3 hours every morning. Like that feels like really a really nice structured way of play. Art is another way. Music. It's nearly doing activities that get you into a place of play without much distraction or interruption, and then giving yourself time to do that.
Well, that's such good advice in terms of like schedule in the play. And to me, I'd share a step even before that I'm struggling from. And it's that you've got to allow yourself and give yourself permission to play. You know, it's like one of the things that, and you probably know this or kind of don't know this about me, because I don't talk about the things I play with often. But like, again, A, I enjoy playing games, but B, I actually enjoy skateboarding. Which is really bizarre for people to hear, but I really enjoy skateboarding because when I get to jump on a skateboard, I feel super free.
Yeah.
I feel like I've just like the wind, and like I'm not a very outdoorsy person. So to me, when I skateboard, I'm like, wow, I feel so free. And I've got a really cool electronic skateboard that I use. And again, I'll go for an electric skateboard session, feel great in the moment. Then after that, I come back and go, well, that's great. You just skateboarded around the neighborhood like a child, and and I just like berate myself after that. And I haven't touched the skateboard in like 7 months. Because during this pandemic, to me, I thought to myself, the last thing you should be doing is playing. You should be all guns blazing. What are you doing, you idiot? Not realizing that playing is what makes the journey fun and enjoyable. Otherwise, this journey we call life is just going to be this monotonous sequence of hell. Right? So to me, thank you, Ollie, for that, because I am going to schedule in time to play this week now. Even today, I want to schedule in time to play and find ways to play. And I'm going to take a skateboard I haven't touched, in 7 months. And then also the other thing is that I just have to get over it and give myself permission to play, for goodness sake.
Well, the bit that stood out there is that narrative. Like really commit to shifting that narrative of feeling guilt when you play. Like turn it into a really positive story. Like, oh shit, I need to play. Like it's nearly negative if I don't play right now. Punish yourself.
And when I play, and when I play, I'll be that joyful person in my group of friends that they can look to as almost a source of inspiration.
Yeah, teaching others to play.
And the way that I look at my son, I can be that for other adults around me. And learn the importance of that, right? Because you're right, dude. The moment you talk about this, who in your group right now can you say is joyful? There's no one. There's friends of mine that are happy because they bought a new house. There's friends of mine who are happy because they bought a new car. Again, moments of spikes in our happiness, that's not sustainable. That's not a sustainable way to be happy. But who is actually joyful? I can't think of one person. But that's because none of us play.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow, I thank you, man. Thank you for bringing that up and saying it in the way that you said it, because that I read that and went, wow, that's really powerful. But you wrapped that up in a way and delivered it in a way that wow, man, that really strikes a chord in me. So thanks for striking that chord like in that way.
Robots can process lots of information and connect it.
I'm still not going to add you to my mastermind of great friends. I'm still not adding you to that. That's
no way. I don't want to be part of that.
No way. Yeah, I don't want to add you to that. I mean,
I said boundaries.
Boundaries are there for a reason. I set boundaries because I keep toxic and negativity and robots out.
Waste my time watching you guys try to meditate every day. Sounds like torture.
You know what I learned through this process of bantering with you is that you're a way better bully than I am, because I can't think of good comebacks. See, so you're just revealing the monster that you are, because I'm like, how does he think of these things to say? It's so mean and funny and good at the same time.
You started. I don't want to be this guy. I want to be kind. Stop trying to push me to the dark side.
Don't deny who you are, man. You're a horrible person.
Oh, come on, man.
Well, share with me. What else? Let's go for one more point in the book. I think we've got time for maybe one more.
We said play and then the creativity.
Oh, creativity. Yes, let's go to creativity.
Let's go into your hitting zone. Like, I think Brene Brown speaks about, I can't remember it exactly, but like it's along the lines of creativity is nearly the purest form of the way that we act and we work and we take action, because it allows us to get to the closest part of nearly our truth when we are creating. And she uses a great example, I think, of an accountant who was making something. I can't remember exactly what the accountant was making, but it was nearly like she was negative towards what she was making. She's like, oh, that's just what I do. I'm an amateur. I don't actually do it. Whereas Brene Brown was looking at it, it's like, no, that's your actual awesomeness, because you're creating something there. It's the thing that lights you up, the thing that you're passionate about. And I thought that was very interesting, as creativity being another tool potentially towards joy or contentment, happiness. And I don't know, you create lots of things. I think the really interesting thing is you're probably more of a professional creator than most would be.
And I'm just trying to think
this is interesting, right? Well, the interesting thing is, because you do creativity for a job, is it something that brings you joy, or is there too much external pressure on it? Because if I go create something, I don't probably create new things as much as what I'd like to. But when I am in that zone, it's very novel. And I love the process of like just very out there creativity that isn't linked to anything that I'm meant to be doing.
Well, I mean, to give context, what Ali is probably referring to is I create programs for my clients. Because of the pandemic, I can't travel to, train my clients, their people in person. So I create sometimes online programs for their people that lives on their LMS. So to me, I do, and to me, that's creating something. But to me, when I immediately thought of creation, I didn't think of my job right now. What I'm thinking is creativity to me is the most useful when I encounter problems. For example, the whole pandemic, can't speak in person anymore, had to kind of create a whole studio to be able to present in. To me, that's when I flourish. It's when you give me a problem and I get to engage in my creativity to solve it.
Well, and then what do you feel when you're in that zone of creativity?
I feel an incredible sense of flow. So when you give me a roadblock and then you give me permission to be creative about how I navigate that roadblock, then it just unlocks like this whole, for me, this freedom of thinking, this freedom of being able to think of all the different ways that I can maneuver around this. And then to me, one of the most powerful things about creativity for me is I have to all these different thoughts come to me, but I just immediately have to just take one of those thoughts and run with it. As opposed to trying to come up with more different ways, I just try to come up with one and then take it and run with it. Because it's often from that thread of thinking that leads to another thread of thinking, that leads to another thread of thinking. Whenever I judge an idea prematurely, I can't be creative. I have to give that idea a chance without judging it. So I've learned how to become very non-judgmental when it comes to my creativity.
Yep.
So when I'm trying to be creative, I'm not in. I've learned how to not be judgmental anymore, and I just flow with it.
Yeah, awesome.
And it often leads to some pretty cool things.
And I think just explaining the concept of flow is, I think it started with, I'll butcher his name, but Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, right? And he wrote the book Flow, around how do people get into flow states. And I think then he researched people, and you could find that a really easy way to get into flow is like extreme sports people, where they just can't focus on anything else other than keeping themselves alive, whether it's rock climbing or climbing up Mount Everest. You get into this state of flow where time passes by, you're so in the zone, you're in that space. And
yes,
just so people can know what flow feels like we all feel it, but it's sometimes fleeting. It's that thing where you sit there for 4 or 5 hours and then you walk out of the study or the workshop and you don't even know where it's gone. That's when you're in a flow state where it's nearly unconscious, right? So, and it feels amazing when you're like, we all search that feeling of flow. But do you have a way that you get into that? Because you have to do it more consistently than others?
Well, it's what I described to you. I'm very aware that I need a capable workstation. I need to have an organized workstation.
Command center.
Yeah, I need my command center. I need the music. I need clarity in what I'm trying to achieve. I need the non-judgmental brain of judging every action I'm about to make. I need that to be rid of that. So to me, I think for everyone that's going to be different, because to me, I solve a lot of my business problems in the command center sitting right there.
Yep.
But if I don't have the right environment, if I don't have my awesome cup of black coffee that comes from a specific coffee machine that I really like, so to me, I've worked out what my little things are that I need to get me into that state of flow. Because every time, and I kid you not, every time I sit down there and I work, the day to me does not feel like a grind. It escapes me. Like, I've also had to set up boundaries with my wife. I had to tell her that, hey, when I'm in here, I know sometimes you bring in food for me and you want me to eat and things like that. That's okay on my days that aren't intense. But on days where I'm really intense, can you don't do that? And I'm saying this to you not because I don't love you and I don't love your food, because you cook amazing food, but it's because it breaks my state of flow. And then it's really hard for me to get back into it again. And she fully, and it's great because my wife and I, we communicate really well together, and then she won't. And then that means I've created all these little boundaries and everything for myself and these requirements that, I kid you not, 8 times out of 10, I can get into that chair and the day just gone. And it's like you snap out of it and you're like, whoa.
Where'd I go?
But everyone has to work out what that is for them. And I think, that book you mentioned, the flow state, like that starts to let you know what the key variables are, that you can start to manipulate.
Well, 2 things that just really stood out, again, from maybe a practical standpoint that you mentioned there was environment. I love how you do that. You've got that set environment where you go in there, and it's really like you've got this process where it's like, all right, now we're pre-programming for a flow state. It's like, all right, walk into the workshop, get to the command center, put on the music, have a coffee, and then you're programming yourself.
And what you're all seeing right now is my studio, right? So I've got little LED lights around my studio, because to me, lighting matters, right? To me, my environment matters. The AC has to be set a certain temperature for me. Like I'm a bit ridiculous like that. And everything to me needs a color scheme. Like I need things to feel this way. And also I protect this environment. If I feel myself being lazy here, I leave. So even for me, Ali, this podcast, I do it in here because every time I talk to you, I want to be in a state of flow. Like I don't do this casually inside my house. I just don't. I want more from myself here. So to me, that's why environment for me is everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that there's some really cool things there to take away in terms of just again, adding an approach to creativity. And what you touched on there is it's pretty hard to be creative without getting close to a flow state. Like you can't sit there and be creative while you're managing 4 other tasks and you've got 50 people running around behind you and you're in a really noisy environment and there's all this distraction, or you've got your phone in front of you and it's beeping all the time. Like, I don't think that's conducive to a creative mindset. So like if I'm thinking about this, like just from what I'm going to do after this episode is 2 things, is just really like do it okay, but scheduling in more structured play and then scheduling more creativity. I think I've definitely lapsed a little bit on the creative side, gotten too comfortable with a bit of a work routine, family routine, life routine, whereas that creative one was the thing that stood out a little bit.
For me, it's 2-3 hours. For me, it's really I'm going to look at ordinary things in life with a different lens. I'm going to learn how to be more kind to myself. I'm going to start to reread the chapter on worthiness, that I don't have to do this, then I'm worthy. I'm worthy now. It's like my mum loves me from the moment I was born. I didn't have to become a doctor, although she maybe secretly still wants me to. I don't have to become extremely wealthy or, drive this car or wear that suit for her to love me. She loves me because she loves me. I have to learn how to love myself the way my mum loves me. I have to learn to love myself the way I love my son. And I'm not very good at that. And, I need to engage in conversations with you, with Lenny, with my cousin Hung, with one of my best mates, Dan. I need to talk to these people about those issues because I never talk about the things that get in the way enough. I don't, because in my mind and in my culture, often it's, because I'm a man, I'm a, I think that. So to me, it's opened up my mind to having more of those tough conversations and talk about the things that get in the way. So it's that, and this book was fantastic. It was so healing. And I also can't wait to report back at some other point, where I get to, man, imagine being able to smile the way our children do. In the ordinary. Like when my son eats one of the dishes that my wife makes that he loves, like you just see him be like, yummy. And then all of a sudden he smiles. And I'm like, wow, this is really good without a smile. Damn, man. Far out. So I can't wait to find joy in the ordinary and schedule in time to play.
Yeah, that bit about
thanks, brother.
Learning from the kids, that stood out. Like this afternoon, we're going to put up the Christmas tree and we're going to do a few other bits and pieces. Whereas usually that would be something where I'd partake in it, but I don't know if I'd be fully into it. I'd be thinking about, all right, do I need to go do something else, or is there something in there? Whereas I think this chat today has at least made the commitment that experience is an opportunity to practice being fully embedded into the joy of it and trying to find the joy
in the ordinary.
Yeah, well, in it, yeah. And it's not ordinary, right? That's the other thing. It's not. Is it ordinary? It's not ordinary, is it? Like, it's the things that we label extraordinary versus ordinary. Like, maybe for us too, it's more extraordinary for us to fully embrace that experience than it is to go and plan an extravagant experience, because that's more in our hitting zone to do the extreme.
I like that reframe. Well, that's so true, because like I said to you at the beginning of the podcast, right, that before we started recording, I said to you that, I got my dad a surprise. And instead of, just getting the courier service to deliver the surprise for my dad, I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to take this opportunity to do something that I feel is very ordinary, that I would normally just go, I'll just pay someone to do it. I go, you know what, I'll go pick it up for my dad. Then I realized that what I got him requires me to go hire a ute and then go down to the docks to pick it up from the shipping container. I was like, oh man, that's so, why would I do that? I should just pay someone. But I was like, no, Vin, try to find joy in the ordinary. So I was like, well, I'll go do it. So then I hired a ute. And you're right, because it's extraordinary for me to do that. Because when I told you the story, you're like, that is ridiculous. And I was like, wow, that is extraordinary that I did that. Because I had to wear like a high-vis shirt. And, you know, I went down to the docks, hired a ute, went down there, got this thing loaded, drove it down to my dad. And then like my dad was in tears when I delivered him this gift. And I felt so much happiness in that moment. Yeah, I was like, damn, man, that was beautiful. And that only felt that beautiful for me because normally I would have just got a text, you know, your package has been delivered to this person. Whereas I got to be the person that delivered it. I found so much happiness and joy in that. And that's what sold me on it. And I think for me, this is my parting words as we end this podcast, is that make sure that when we read to apply. Don't read for the sake of just acquiring knowledge. Bruce Lee speaks to this in the last podcast we did. Don't just be obsessed with acquiring knowledge. Every time you read something, or every time you hear something, every time you listen to a podcast, listen to it and then walk away from it going, well, what am I actually going to apply? Because me applying that simple thing of trying to find joy in the ordinary, wow, it's changed my 2 weeks. So that's what I would say. Read not only for the acquisition of knowledge, read for the application of it. Mm-hmm. What would you say, Ali, as the parting words as we end episode 8?
Parting words, the one that just sticks out at the moment is write to yourself and speak to yourself. Try to connect as much as you can. And journaling's a way to do it. If you just sit there writing just freely without any purpose for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then just see what comes up. Like, what do you need to listen to? What's running through your mind? What do you need to address? What's something that's sitting there that's unfinished? Whatever it is. But then, and do it for a period of time so that you can really start hearing yourself. Do it without distraction, without too much external pressure. That's probably the thought that I got. And I think it's something that Brene Brown just reminded me about, is how important it is that a lot of the good stuff starts from us, potentially internally, I think. And then we do our best to sabotage it. And, like those narratives that we add, we do that. No one else does it.
Yeah.
It's our experience that we live. So might as well try to make it an enjoyable one. See the pun there? Joy. It's good. We can finish now.
I think that just proves you're a robot. You basically just that was It's true. I've realized you're the better bully than me, but that's okay. Well, look, everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this episode. And just remember that if you want to subscribe to our podcast, just head over to vinandalishow.com. So it's just vinandalishow.com, VINHAND, Ali, ALI, show.com. So thanks everyone for joining us for the 8th episode. Bye for now.
Cheers.